So I've been playing Dino Crisis 2. On May 2010, the entirety of Edward City disappeared off of the face of the Earth through a time gate caused by the events of the first Dino Crisis. To investigate, they sent in the Tactical Reconnaissance and Acquisition Team and their legendary leaders Regina and Dylan. Upon arrival, however, the team gets attacked by a pack of wild velociraptors and a vicious T-Rex.
Yeah.
Regina said to her terrified teammates as they head further into the jungle to stop the dinosaur outbreak, reverse the damages caused by the time gate, and make it home in time for dinner. And that's more or less the extent of the plot. Which is weird as well, considering that Capcom is obviously known for its intricate and intelligently written storylines. My best guess as to why they went with a gameplay first type of approach this time around is because of this being a full-on third-person shooter instead of a more traditionally formed survival horror game. Of course, it is one of those early awkward hybrids that still has the cinematic camera angles, the stiffer movements, and the pretense of being spooky. But all things considered, it's really not as bad as it could have been. I mean, there's tank controls, sure, but the turning arc and running speed are jacked right the fuck up. You're also able to walk and shoot at the same time, and generally the controls overall are actually pretty fucking amazing. The map button, for instance, is now linked to a single shoulder button instead of it being an option in menu. And while shooting is about as resi as it gets, with how you bring up gun using R1 and fire with face button, you're now able to quick turn while doing that, have a cheeky shank by pressing circle, and press L1 to rapidly lock on and face thine foe so there's no more awkward turreting around. Oh, and running is now the default option over walking, which is also cool. Basically, it's a lot like RE4's control scheme, only played from a different perspective and a little bit less refined. Though that doesn't mean that structurally it isn't at all like a traditional survival horror game in which you find notes, examine stuff, look for key cards, and use cumbersome menus to do shit. Really, the only big difference here besides the controls is how it encourages you killing enemies over slowly exploring and conserving healing items and ammo. Reason being is that killing dino dinkies in rapid succession awards you points, handed out to you during area transitions, that you're able to use to buy ammo, health packs, new weapons, and upgrades for said weapons over at your friendly neighborhood save station. All of this might require a bit of adjusting at first, considering that it certainly still looks and sounds like a Resident Evil game, but quite quickly I found myself falling in love with the thrill of the kill. Dino Crisis 2 has one hell of a fucking arsenal. There's the old faithful shotgun, which does a lot of damage up close, kind of forcing you to put yourself in harm's way in a way. There's the regular handgun, of course, which is fast, but a tad on the weaker side. But then, there's also shit like a fucking flamethrower used mostly for plant-based enemies, or a projectile-based mine dispenser with which you can topple hard-backed dino men. A
heavy machine gun
that uses armor-piercing rounds and has so much recoil that it makes you walk around the map slowly like a fucking Terminator. And lastly, but never leastly, my favorite, the fucking anti-tank rifle that effortlessly one-shots just about everything. All weapons handle a bit differently and have enemies built around their features, so one's encouraged to switch around and experiment. This really makes for some very simple yet pretty fucking varied gameplay, which could just as very well have been the game's theme. Simple and varied. I mean, because Dylan is a little bit of a monkey and Regina thinks too highly of herself, the two end up splitting up almost instantly. You don't get to choose, the story dictates who you and when you play as, and while some puzzle items as well as healing items end up being shared, they both play very differently due to the weapons unique to them. In regards to sub-weapons, for instance, Dylan has a machete with which he can cut vines, and Regina has an electric rod so she can short-circuit electronic locks. And naturally, the map is designed around this, so you end up having areas only available to one character or wacky situations like Regina having to save Jarhead Boy who's got himself trapped like a complete fucking moron. It's pretty cool though. Again, it's a very simple addition that ends up adding a lot. I mean, it would have been easy to have this turn into a repetitive piece of shit. Looking at other horror action crossovers Capcom made at the time, that was certainly their fucking MO. But this game is
hella fun.
To the point where even the cheeky turret sections are awesome and cool, and quite frankly, I just kinda want to play through this game again. Which it allows for as well. You can unlock all kinds of stuff like modes, weapons, characters, and your save file even lists the amounts of playthroughs, really hinting at it wanting to be played more than once. Honestly, with the way that I'm talking about it now, it almost seems like the game is completely perfect, right? As much as I love my PS1 stylings and dumb stupid action, Jurassic Crisis 2 is an old-ass game. And while it's definitely aged better than most PS1 era action games, it still shows its age in some regards. The biggest deal to me personally being backtracking. The team-based, puzzle-based elements might seem cool on paper, but when put into practice, it becomes really hard to deny how much they make you retrace your steps. I guess they figured that simply shooting dudes wouldn't be enough for a full game, and they may very well have been right, as even now it still kind of feels like a 1-hour experience stretched out over 4 hours. DC2 just doesn't really have any puzzles. Get keycard to open door is essentially all you get, and they're never hard to find either, so I have questionable reasons as to believe it really is just there to pad out the playtime. And also, the camera can be a bit of a douche still. Not as bad as in Parasite Eve 2 or anything, but the transitions do have a mild hitch to them, and considering how fast you move, this can be a tad disorientating even with the tank controls. Like, it becomes pretty easy to overshoot things. Most of my more frustrating moments spent with the game consisted out of me trying to grab onto a ladder or open a door, while in some type of urgent pickle-dickle, only to then keep running up against a wall next to it, mashing X, cutting in between camera angles, or getting stuck on the sometimes way too cluttered level geometry. Maybe them pulling a Devil May Cry, ditching the tank controls in favor of wide open areas would have been a better idea. I mean, your moveset's already more than equipped enough to deal with these dudes, which is definitely commendable, but by the time they can attack you from off-screen with little to no warning due to the lack of screen real estate, things might turn a little bit sour. Especially when you take into consideration that the auto-lock-on aim thingamajiggy is far from perfect. The Wikipedia page describes Strat as an off-record covert group of shady characters recruited from Special Army Forces, which leads to some quality banter of the spiciest varieties. Dino Crisis 2 might not have much of a story, but what is there is so horribly dumb and typically Capcom that I can't help but kind of fall in love with it either way. And surprisingly enough, the voice acting's actually pretty okay good. Regina's still cool too. She's the only Capcom character that has a consistent look, voice, and personality across more than one game, so she could potentially be the best character they've ever written. All cutscenes do have this really ugly ass motion blur for some reason. Ooh, ass ghosting. Though the story is still a pretty neat framework for this mad cunt of a game. I really don't want to understate just how much fun it is to actually play. Like, it's so very fucking dedicated to being insane that there isn't even any reloading to speak of. If you have 200 bullets, you will have 200 fucking bullets, mate. Just storm on through the jungle like a fast-ass fuck-ass tanking-ass tank, mowing down dino dicks like it's nothing. As I said, catharsis incarnate. Overall, I'm quite content with the content of this video juego. It shows its age here and there with a health system that could have easily been more intuitive and the camera angles and stuff, but those are also simply products of its time and don't hold the game back much either way. Plus, they implemented plenty of addictive design choices that put it a bit ahead of its time as well. Like, shooting things is fun, so collecting points by raking in combo kills is even more fun. But to then be able to spend those points on weapon upgrades that allow you to kill even more better, more faster, and more efficiently makes for mega ultra fun. Ooh! This game is fun and surprisingly atmospheric to boot. During the more laid-back bits while exploring the rundown environments, for instance, bugs will scurry away upon uncovering a cold dead corpse. And while patrolling the wide-open landscapes, you'll see massive dino men off in the distance shaking the ground with their big, hulking footsteps. Also, there are mosquitoes everywhere. Wow! And hearing the dino dingoes fuck about in the bushes or screech at you from a distance is pretty cool as well. All of it seems to be there to build tension for spooks, which is a bit misplaced, but I do quite love Capcom's selective level to detail in regards to them making their worlds believable. Hell, even the descriptive text is of a decently high caliber, talking about how thick the air is, how moist the cardboard boxes are, how wet the floor is, or how dank the plants feel. Besides stirring you on, it gives off a good feel of the current state of the environment. It certainly feels a lot more like a Dino Crisis than the first game did. Though the pre-renders sadly do seem a bit too compressed even for PS1 standards, which is probably due to the game having a lot of the bitmappy buggers and it only being on one single disc. But bruh, it is a bit of a shame with how much more atmospheric the game could have been if it hadn't looked like someone just smeared Vaseline all over my screen. So, yeah. 0 out of 10. Fucking pieces of shit making my capture card look bad. Suck my dick, Capcom!